It's always important to encourage behaviours that contribute to a purposeful learning environment within the classroom. One way we do this, certainly at the start of each year, is to negotiate ground rules right at the beginning, often during the induction period, when they're all starting to get to know each other, but still there's been no preconceived ideas of what's going on. So we get the students to actually get in groups and write down what they think should be the ground rules, so groups of 4 or 5, and then we collaborate them at the end and have it up on the wall. But one key good thing about this is that as the students are doing it, they're sort of taking control about it, taking control of their own future actions. So if they were to break one of these rules, they'll be breaking their own rules. So they're more inclined to really want to stick to it because they're the ones that have come up with it, rather than someone like a teacher who's forcing it onto them. So we find that works really well. It's also good practice to build up a safe physical and emotional environment within the classroom. Use of starter activities brings people together, different personalities together. We make it fun and engaging. Topical news quizzes, for example, which is very relevant. But just building up a good physical environment, we find it quite tough in our classrooms of journalism because it's all on Macs, all on computers, so they're very set in their ways, they're constantly staring at computers, it's very easily for them to lose focus and things like that, so we find it actually quite hard, but then it's also about getting to move about, doing some physical activities as well, and making sure that there's enough room for everybody to move about. We have a wheelchair user, for example, so it's making sure that there's enough room for a wheelchair user to walk about, doesn't annoy people, doesn't get in the wheelchair user's way. So just building up that idea of a mutual respect as well going on, because that's sort of the emotional environment, building up mutual respect, including the grouping things, have that open dialogue going on. And one way we did this, we had a student who had to go off and have quite a serious operation, heart issues, and actually had bleeding on the brain and things like that. So what we did, the class thought it'd be a great idea to get a big card and everyone write a little message into them. Even those who weren't quite, didn't really know that well, or friends, were still writing notes of goodwill in, and we felt that was a really good way of building this emotional environment, and it breaks down barriers within the group. All different personalities, lots of personalities can clash. By doing things like that, the group activities, it can break down those barriers and people get on with each other and less likely to cause bad behaviour, bad blood between people in the class and things like that. It also ties in with having a really inclusive teaching and learning, using inclusive teaching and learning techniques, making sure everyone feels involved and no one gets left out, and not just focusing on one group or one person too much, because then it's easy for others to lose focus or attention, and then bad habits, going on their phone too often, or they're in the corner on a computer, so they might have Facebook up or things like that. Bad habits, bad behaviour can start to occur. So it's very important to make sure you're always including everyone when you're doing group activities, when you're doing question and answering as the whole class and things like that, not just focusing on one person. And one way of doing it that we do is using it as a softball, and I'd throw the softball to someone and catch it, then they'd have to throw it to someone else, and this would go on. So everyone's always looking ready for the ball to come, so everyone's paying attention. One final way I find to certainly encourage positive behaviour is to make yourself an approachable and confident teacher. So as a teacher, you have to ensure that you're fair to everyone, gain that respect, so that learners, I find, are more likely to follow instructions, and they sort of want to learn. They're more motivated to learn, rather than, if you don't have the students' respect, then they're more likely to want to behave badly, I've always found. And also, as a teacher, as an approachable teacher, you also play the role as learner mentor. And what I do is have regular one-to-ones with students, have that open dialogue, talking about work, but also that then encourage them to talk about other issues that may be going on in the class, and talk to them if their behaviour's an issue, then encourage positive behaviour and reinforce it in one-to-one sessions away from everyone. And I feel it's just getting students used to talking to the teacher, and I find this can really build up trust and then improve relations within the classroom. So it's also important to manage behaviours that disrupt a purposeful learning environment, and this can mean dealing with behaviours as they happen, but also trying to be proactive and preventing bad behaviours from happening in the first place. So one routine we have, we brought in this year to deal with lateness learners, which we found is a huge problem. People just walking in and out whenever they want, and then the whole class is disturbed because someone walks in. So we've introduced these coloured signs on the doors. So up until the time the class starts, at 9:30, or at break and lunch times, or when there's a workshop session going on, we'd have a green sign on the door outside which says workshop session in progress, or workshop session, please enter, please come in, which means that students are allowed to enter freely. Okay, they can come in when they like. But as soon as 9:30 hits, or 1:30 after lunch and things like that, then the teacher pops out, swaps the sign over, and changes it to a yellow sign, which is on the other side, which says class in progress, please wait outside. Okay, and this then we ask learners to, when they turn up late, even if it's 1 minute after 9:30, they would knock on the door, loud so the teacher can hear. The teacher will realise that there's someone outside, but they won't stop what they were doing just to focus on one learner. They'll carry on what they were doing, teaching, whatever STAR activity they're doing, and then at an appropriate stopping point, they would pop outside, speak to a learner, challenge them about why they're late, and then invite them into class and catch them up again at an appropriate time. Which we found works really well this year, and students have been a lot more respectful about entering a class, and it's promoted very, very good discipline and respect for the system. Another little way that certainly I introduced at some point, which works to a point, certainly with more little offences, so an accidental swear word, checking mobile phones, talking too loudly, throwing a bit of paper across the room. I introduced a 3-strike system on the board. So a very visual system that everyone can see. And if I heard someone swear, or if I saw them sneakily checking their mobile phone, then I'd knock a strike off. I had all the names on the board of 3 strikes next to it. And it became like students saw it as a game, but in a positive way. So it'd be a challenge to behave properly throughout the lesson, because if they lost their strike, they'll be asked to leave the classroom for that particular day, 3 strikes each day. And gradually it got better, students' behaviour got better and better, because they didn't want to be seen as not having strikes on the board, and certain people realised that their behaviour was maybe worse than others. And this was something that, again, we could reinforce in one-to-one meetings and chat about why their behaviour was worse. So we felt that helped really well for the sort of more minor offences within class. Another thing, if there was needed, if discipline needed challenging within class, we've got this one learner who has a variety of learning needs, and one of them is, in particular, is if they're directly challenged about bad behaviour, certainly in front of the rest of the class, or just in general, then they would react, like a north magnet. They'll be well against it. Their behaviour would get even worse. They might storm out. We've had that in the past. So one way of doing this is just almost quietly acknowledging and reinforcing that person is behaving badly, but ask either to see them one-to-one outside, or just wait until break time and then talk to them and challenge them about why their behaviour was bad. And that just calms the situation and kind of encourages that learner, kind of doesn't make that learner feel as bad, and it hopefully then promotes that feeling of respect and behaviour that should hopefully improve.